Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started, good luck. Which of the following is not a typical shared resource that AWS Application Cost Profiler helps allocate? AWS Direct Connect, NAT Gateways, Dedicated EC2 Instances, Elastic Load Balancers. Dedicated EC2 instances are not typically shared resources as they are provisioned for specific applications. AWS Application Cost Profiler helps allocate costs for shared resources like NAT gateways, Direct Connect, and ELBs. In AWS Application Cost Profiler, what is cost allocation harvesting? A technique to forecast future application costs. The process of collecting and analyzing resource usage data. A way to redistribute surplus budget. A method to reduce unused resource costs. Cost allocation harvesting, in AWS Application Cost Profiler refers to the process of collecting and analyzing resource usage data from services like CloudTrail to accurately allocate shared costs. What is the role of AWS IAM in the context of AWS Application Cost Profiler? To authorize budget increases. To control access to cost allocation settings. To authenticate applications for cost tracking. To manage resource-level permissions. AWS IAM is used to control access to AWS Application Cost Profiler settings, ensuring that only authorized personnel can view or modify cost allocation rules. In AWS Application Cost Profiler, what is idle cost allocation? Charging for reserved but unused capacity. Billing for off-hours resource availability. Ignoring costs of inactive resources. Assigning costs of underutilized shared resources. Idle cost allocation, in AWS Application Cost Profiler refers to fairly assigning costs of underutilized shared resources, ensuring applications pay for their reserved capacity even when idle. Which AWS service can trigger Application Cost Profiler to update allocation rules based on changes in application architecture? AWS Config. AWS Systems Manager. AWS CloudFormation. AWS Service Catalog. AWS CloudFormation can be used to automatically update AWS Application Cost Profiler's allocation rules when there are changes in application architecture, ensuring cost allocation stays aligned with infrastructure changes. Which AWS service can help automate the updating of Application Cost Profiler rules? AWS Fargate. AWS Lambda. AWS Step Functions. AWS Batch. AWS Lambda functions can be used to automate the process of updating AWS Application Cost Profiler rules based on triggers like resource changes or cost anomalies. How does AWS Application Cost Profiler handle cost allocation for applications using AWS Private Link? By distributing costs to all connected VPCs. By charging the service provider only. By analyzing VPC endpoint usage. By allocating to the VPC owner. AWS Application Cost Profiler analyses VPC endpoint usage metrics to allocate AWS private link costs accurately among applications consuming the private services. What is the role of AWS Glue in enhancing AWS Application Cost Profiler's accuracy? To catalog all AWS resources for billing. To transform cost data into a standard format. To provide data lineage for better cost tracking. To schedule cost allocation jobs. AWS Glue's data lineage capabilities help AWS Application Cost Profiler track data flows more accurately, improving cost allocation in complex data processing pipelines. Which AWS service can Application Cost Profiler use to allocate costs in a microservices architecture? Amazon ECS, AWS X-Ray, AWS App Mesh, AWS Cloud Map. AWS X-Ray provides detailed tracing in microservices architectures, helping AWS Application Cost Profiler accurately allocate shared resource costs based on each service's interactions. What is the benefit of using AWS Application Cost Profiler for multi-tenant architectures? Tenant-specific performance metrics. Automatic tenant provisioning. Tenant isolation enforcement. Accurate cost division among tenants. In multi-tenant architectures, AWS Application Cost Profiler enables accurate division of shared infrastructure costs among different tenants, ensuring fair billing and cost transparency. How does AWS Application Cost Profiler handle cost allocation during a blue/green deployment? By using tags to differentiate between versions. By evenly splitting costs between versions. By allocating all costs to the green version. By allocating all costs to the blue version. During blue/green deployments, AWS Application Cost Profiler uses distinct tags for each version, allowing accurate cost allocation to both blue and green versions as they coexist. What is the purpose of cost allocation splits in AWS Application Cost Profiler? To differentiate peak and off-peak pricing. To divide a resource's cost among multiple applications. To separate fixed and variable costs. To distinguish between CPU and memory costs. Cost allocation splits in AWS Application Cost Profiler allow a single resource's cost to be divided among multiple applications based on predefined ratios or usage patterns. In AWS Application Cost Profiler, how are database proxy costs allocated? Entirely to the application with most queries. Based on each application's connection usage. To the application that provisioned the proxy. Equally among all database using apps. For AWS RDS proxy or similar services, AWS Application Cost Profiler allocates costs based on each application's connection pool usage and query volume. In AWS Application Cost Profiler, what is cost allocation tagging? A technique to predict future tagging needs. Using resource tags to associate costs with applications. A method to hide sensitive cost information. A way to apply discounts to specific resources. Cost allocation tagging in AWS Application Cost Profiler involves using AWS resource tags to associate shared costs directly with specific applications or services. How does AWS Application Cost Profiler handle cost allocation for spot instances in shared environments? By distributing equally due to their ephemeral nature. By using custom rules based on application priority. By always allocating to the lowest cost application. By assigning all spot costs to a risk management category. In shared environments, AWS Application Cost Profiler can use custom rules to allocate spot instance costs based on application priority or criticality, reflecting each application's risk tolerance. How does AWS Application Cost Profiler handle cost allocation for applications using AWS Global Accelerator? Based on each application's traffic distribution. By distributing costs to all edge locations. By charging the application with global presence. By allocating to the primary region. AWS Application Cost Profiler allocates AWS Global Accelerator costs based on each application's traffic distribution across regions, using flow logs and performance data. In AWS Application Cost Profiler, how are data transfer costs typically allocated? Entirely to the application with the most data transfer. Equally among all internet-facing applications. Based on each application's data flow patterns. To the application that initiated the most connections. Data transfer costs in AWS Application Cost Profiler are typically allocated based on each application's data flow patterns, determined by analyzing CloudTrail logs or VPC flow logs. Which AWS service can be used in conjunction with Application Cost Profiler to visualize allocated costs. AWS Cost Anomaly Detection. AWS Pricing Calculator. AWS Cost Explorer. AWS Budgets. After allocating shared costs with AWS Application Cost Profiler, you can use AWS Cost Explorer to visualize and analyze these costs, providing graphical representations and trends. How does AWS Application Cost Profiler handle cost allocation for applications using AWS Fargate? By distributing costs across all ECS clusters. By allocating to the primary container. By analyzing task execution metrics. By charging based on the number of tasks. AWS Application Cost Profiler uses task execution metrics from AWS Fargate to allocate costs, considering factors like vCPU, memory usage, and duration for each application's tasks. What is a cost category in the context of AWS Application Cost Profiler? A predefined set of AWS services. A discount category for high-usage applications. A pricing tier for AWS resources. A way to group related applications for cost analysis. In AWS Application Cost Profiler, a cost category is a feature that allows you to group related applications or services together for easier cost analysis and reporting. What type of AWS resources are typically not included in AWS Application Cost Profiler's shared cost allocation? VPN connections. Transit gateways. Internet gateways. Application-specific databases. Application-specific databases, like Amazon RDS instances dedicated to a single application, are typically not included in shared cost allocation as they are not shared resources. What type of AWS cost and usage report is required for AWS Application Cost Profiler? Service level CUR. Account level CUR. Resource level CUR. Region level CUR. AWS Application Cost Profiler requires a resource-level cost and usage report to accurately map shared resource costs to individual applications or services. Which of the following is not a valid cost allocation method in AWS Application Cost Profiler? Fixed percentage. Equal split. Resource ownership. Proportional usage. Resource ownership is not a standard cost allocation method in AWS Application Cost Profiler. Valid methods include fixed percentage, proportional usage, and equal split among applications. What is the role of AWS organizations in the context of AWS Application Cost Profiler? To create organizational units for applications. To manage application permissions. To set service control policies. To apply cost allocation across multiple AWS accounts. AWS organizations allows AWS Application Cost Profiler to apply consistent cost allocation rules across multiple AWS accounts, providing a unified view of application costs in complex environments. Which AWS service can Application Cost Profiler integrate with for more accurate network cost allocation? AWS Direct Connect, AWS Global Accelerator, AWS Transit Gateway, VPC Flow Logs. AWS Application Cost Profiler can use VPC flow logs to more accurately allocate network costs by analyzing the actual data flows between applications and shared network resources. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.